Hi everyone and welcome back to Tomes and Travel. Today I'm here to do the Dilemmas of a Book Nerd tag, which was originally started by Lindsey's Little Library. I haven't actually been tagged by anyone, so technically I am breaking the rules by doing this tag without being tagged. But I did see the video on One Book, One Reviews channel. I loved her answers and it really just inspired me to get back into the habit of making tag videos again and talking about my bookish habits, my bookish obsessions, and in this case, the dilemmas that I face as a reader. Just before I start and before I forget, I'm going to tag a few people that I'd like to see do this video. So I'm going to tag Shah from Thoroughly Enjoyed Books because I thoroughly enjoy her channel. I love the content that she's putting out at the moment and she's always really supportive and really thoughtful in the comments on my own videos, so I really appreciate that. Also Jean from Bookish Thoughts. She's a PhD student in classics, so I feel like her answers are going to be really different, particularly with all the old classic books. Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction, whose channel I've recently discovered and I really love the content that she's putting out. Plus, she is a northern booktuber from Yorkshire, so obviously got to support those Yorkshire people, even though I don't really have a strong accent when I film videos because apparently I put on a strange camera voice, but I am from Yorkshire if you weren't sure. And finally Sajid from Books Are My Social Life, who lives in Trinidad and Tobago, so I think he reads a lot of kind of cultural books. It'd be really interesting to hear his thoughts and his perspective on these different questions. So the first question of the tag video is related to book storage, and it is: how do you store and organise your books? In general, I am a real organisation freak. I love organising everything. I'm an organiser of organising, if that makes sense. So organisation is just so important to me. But in terms of my books, I tend to just put them on my bookshelf where they look nice and where they fit. If you want to see more of my bookshelf, I did recently film a bookshelf tour, so I'll link that down below if you're interested in seeing the books a little bit closer. But in general, where they fit and where they look nice is the main way that I organise, and then I tend to like to put series together as well. So if there's a series, I like to have them all in one place just for practical purposes when I'm trying to find a book, and also obviously the spines look quite nice next to each other if they have the same spine design within the series. A couple of years ago, I think it was around 2014, 2015, I did arrange my bookshelf in rainbow colours, so I would have like a green section and a red section and a blue section, and I really liked the look of that, like aesthetically pleasing, it definitely was, but it was not practical at all. It was so annoying when I was trying to find books in a series and I didn't know exactly what colour the book was, so it was really complicated trying to find it. All the authors were muddled up, all the genres were muddled up, so I decided to revert back to a more traditional way of organising my bookshelf, and that's how I've had it ever since. Question number 2 is tracking. How do you keep track of what you've read and what books you own? So, to be honest, in terms of books that I read, I always do a book review on Goodreads as soon as I finish reading it to get my initial thoughts in the heat of the moment. So obviously once I've done a book review and given it a star rating, it's kind of tracked and logged on Goodreads for my own sort of reference, as well as for you lot to see as well if you're interested in reading the reviews. And then I tend to film book review videos a week or two after I've read the book, when I have time to film and edit. And in terms of tracking books that I own, to be honest, the books I own are on my bookshelf. I walk past it every day. I kind of know what books I own. I have seen some booktubers in the past having really complicated Microsoft Excel spreadsheets, which I really admire, but honestly it's so much work and I would rather spend the time reading books rather than organising the ones I own, because if I spend ages doing all the organisation, my TBR pile is going to grow and grow and grow, and I will have like 100 books to read. And why would I want to spend time organising the books when I could spend time reading them? Question number 3 is borrow. Do you lend your books out? And in short, the answer is no. And it is not because I'm a selfish person, absolutely not. It's just because I don't really know many people in my local area who have the same kind of bookish interests as me, and no one has really asked to borrow a book. So I haven't really gone out of my way to do that. When I was in secondary school as a teenager, I did used to borrow and lend books to my friends, particularly because obviously you're in school every day, you can see people all the time, you can give them a book one day, then a few days later you can get it back, you really know what's going on with that book. But now everyone kind of went to different universities across the country and everyone has different jobs in all different kinds of cities, so all of my bookish people are not really near me anymore, so I'm not really going to be posting books out to them because postage prices are so expensive. Question number 4 is book buying, which is probably every booktuber's obsession. I think sometimes we go a little bit crazy with book buying as booktubers. To be honest, recently I've not been too bad, but when I started BookTube it was just ridiculous. I tend to buy most of my books online because I live on the outskirts of the city, so I don't actually go into physical bookshops that often unless I take the bus or the train, which obviously is quite expensive in itself. So it just makes the book buying experience so much more expensive if I have to get public transport to get to the bookshop in the first place. So book buying online tends to be the way forward for me. So at the moment I tend to either buy used books from eBay or new books from Waterstones online. The great thing about Waterstones online is that if you create an account with them, for every £10 you spend, you get 1 virtual stamp. And then when you've spent £100 and got 10 stamps, you can get £10 off your next purchase. So in the long run, you can actually save quite a lot of money by doing that. The books are always in great condition. It's just really quick, really easy. I'm not sponsored by Waterstones, by the way, but I just really like their system. In terms of acquiring books, obviously I am a booktuber, so sometimes I get books sent to me by publishers or by individual authors independently. But over the last year or two, I've kind of stopped doing that. I've kind of stopped receiving advanced reader copies just because it was getting a little bit out of control. And I think in 2015, 2014 maybe, I was receiving like maybe 5 books a month, and publishers would just send me any random book, even if I wasn't genuinely interested in it. And I kind of got to the point where obviously I wanted to read the books and review them because I felt like that was kind of courteous to do. But then I wasn't genuinely interested in them and I wasn't enjoying them that much. And I thought that the books may as well go to someone else who genuinely wants them. So rather than me receiving books that I'm not really bothered about, I'd rather another booktuber receive the books if they're interested in the author or interested in the themes. Question number 5 is comments. How do you respond to the "how do you read so much" comment or similar comments? And the basic answer is I don't respond to these comments because I don't really receive them. I think I probably did used to receive comments like this when I was in secondary school as a teenager. Everyone knew I was the bookish person in my school. Everyone knew about my BookTube channel, including some of the teachers. So everyone would ask me like, how do you read 50 books in a year? Or whatever it was that I used to read in 2012, 2013, when I was a really active reader. Obviously I still am an active reader today, but I don't feel like it's the only thing that I do, and I do all different kinds of hobbies. I'm here, there and everywhere, so I do like reading, but I feel like it's not the only thing, so no one really asks me that much about reading, and maybe just no one's really interested. I don't really know that many bookish people in the real world, in real life. I hate saying in real life because obviously all you watching, you're still living in the real world, but obviously this is kind of virtual on YouTube. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't get that many booktubers asking that kind of question because I read a lot less than the average booktuber, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm quite a slow reader. I like to take my time with the books, which is completely fine, but I don't think anyone on BookTube is really amazed or like inspired by the amount of books that I read. Question number 6, how do you pick your next book? And in general, I am quite a mood reader, so if I read one book that I really like, I kind of get in a mood to read a similar book, either by the same author or by a different author, maybe within the same genre, or a book that deals with similar themes. So once I kind of read one book, I sort of read a couple of books that are similar in a row. An example of this is the fact that I'm currently reading The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, which is the second book in the Kingkiller Chronicles series. I love this so far. Amazing characterization of Quoth. I love his rivalry with a character called Ambrose at the university. So unpredictable and intense. A little bit slow at times in terms of the pacing, but I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of the book. I'm about 300 pages in so far. Really good, love the characterization and love the world building, but basically I'm going off on a tangent now. What I was meaning to say was this is a high fantasy novel, and in general I'm not really a reader of high fantasy books, but this has kind of inspired me to read more in the future. So in terms of deciding what book to read next, I might read another fantasy novel next. because I'm kind of in the mood for it. Question number 7 is actually related to the second part of my username, Tomes and Travel. So the question is, how do you pick what book you take on holiday with you? This is a really weird question and kind of hard to answer, because I know a lot of people in real life who are not really massive readers, but then they get to the airport and they go to the bookshop in the airport and they buy loads of books to read on their holiday, and they spend the entire week or the entire 2 weeks reading, even though they don't tend to read much at home. I'm actually the opposite of this, because I read so much when I'm in the UK that when I go on holiday, even though I love reading, I kind of want to explore the local area, maybe go around the city, or if it's not a city, just to, you know, learn about the cultures, try different restaurants and things like that, and really immerse myself in the culture. And obviously if I go to a country that speaks French or Spanish, I like to interact with the locals as well and practice my language skills. So when I'm on holiday, reading isn't really a massive thing that I do, and I only tend to read on the plane there and on the plane back. So I tend to just take whatever book I'm reading at the time. I don't have particular like holiday reads. Like, I know some people have like kind of beach reads and really summary books. I don't really do that. I just read what I feel like or what I'm reading at the time. If I'm spending the money to go away on holiday, I would rather do something that I can't do in the UK. And obviously I can read in the UK basically all the time, every day. So when I'm on holiday and I can do different things and there's different excursions and things, I would rather really appreciate the country and the destination for what it offers me, rather than spending the entire time reading. I feel like I'm sort of a bad booktuber for saying that I don't read all the time, but I don't read all the time. I have other hobbies, I have other interests, and when I go on holiday, I just don't really feel like I'm in the mood for reading, and there's so much to do abroad that I would rather go there and make the most of what the destination has to offer. Question number 8 is annotate. Do you write in, highlight or mark your books in any way? And kind of not. When I was at university, I studied modern languages and cultures, as I've said quite a few times in recent videos, and as part of the course I had to study a lot of literature in French and in Spanish. And when I was reading those books, I definitely annotated in them in pencil, particularly when I was reading books in the foreign languages. Obviously I came across quite a lot of new words and new vocab that I'd never come across before, so I went to find what the words meant in a dictionary and I'd write the definitions next to them. I would always annotate for language learning purposes, and then alongside that I would do like annotations about the themes and about the characters, just so that when I was writing an essay on the book I could quickly go back to my thoughts and remember what I felt in the heat of the moment when I was reading the book. Obviously sometimes when you've read an entire book and you go back to it to write an essay, you've read the whole thing and you sort of know what happens, whereas when you actually go back to your initial reactions and your gut feelings, I feel like that's really useful when you're writing an essay, or even when you're writing a book review, although to be honest I don't tend to write in the books that I am reading recreationally for BookTube. I tend to write comments on my computer or in a notebook. I don't write in the books, because most of the books I read recreationally are new books, whereas the books I read for university tended to be used books just because they were cheaper to buy, and I was only really going to read them once and then probably get rid of them again. So used books I had no problem annotating, but with new books I'm a little bit hesitant. Question number 9, the penultimate question, is new or backlist. Which do you prefer, new or backlist books? To be honest, I don't really have a preference. If I'm interested in the synopsis and the themes, and if I'm interested in the author and I always want to buy books by them, it doesn't matter if the book's recently been released or if it's been released 10 years ago. If I want to read a book, I will read the book. There are definitely authors that I go to straight away as soon as they release a new book. So for example, Ruiz, Zafón, who is one of my favourite writers, whenever he releases a new book, I have to buy it almost immediately, just because I'm so intrigued to read more by him. But there are some authors that I quite like, but I'm not desperate to buy. So maybe I'll wait a couple of years until the price has gone down. Sometimes books are released as hardbacks and then later they're released as paperbacks. So the paperbacks tend to be cheaper. Sometimes I'll wait around for the paperbacks, but it really depends, to be honest. If I'm interested in a book and I really want to read it, there's nothing stopping me. And the final question, number 10, is sequels. Do you read books as they are released or wait for an entire series to be published before reading one book? In general, I read books as they're released because, for example, in the case of The Wise Man's Fear by Rothfuss, no one knows when book 3 is coming out. This is the second book, and book 3 might not come out for another 5 years or something, so I wouldn't want to wait and hold off reading this book just because the last book hasn't come out yet. So I would just read books when they are released and wait patiently for the next one to come out. I feel like it would be really annoying if I waited for entire series to be published before I even read the first book in that series. And at the end of the day, what if I didn't like the first book in that series and I didn't want to read all the others? It would be a waste of time waiting for the entire series to be released. And imagine if you bought an entire series as a box set and then you didn't even like the first book. It would just be a waste of money. So I tend to buy books when they're released, when they're published. I don't tend to wait around too long. So everyone, that was it for the dilemmas of a book nerd tag. I hope you enjoyed this video. I feel like the lighting might have gone a little bit weird at times. It seems to be really strange in the UK at the moment in terms of the weather. One minute it's really sunny, the next minute it's cloudy and we're having thunderstorms. So apologies for the lighting. I don't really have any like fancy video lighting at the moment or anything, so I just have to kind of film when I can. But I hope you found this video interesting, and to the people that I tagged, I would absolutely love to see your versions of the tag. I'd really love to hear your answers, and even if I didn't specifically tag you, I kind of tag everyone, to be honest. So if you want to respond to this video, obviously you can mention me, but please mention the creator of the tag, Lindsey's Little Library. Obviously when someone creates a tag, it's really like nice to appreciate what they've done, and I really love this tag actually. I thought it was really interesting. Some really different questions about different bookish habits and different scenarios that I've been in, and I feel like everyone's a little bit different as a booktuber in terms of the way they organise the books, the way they buy the books and everything. So a really, really interesting tag. So before I ramble on anymore, I want to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again in my next video.